Alright everybody, welcome back. How y'all doing? This is another episode of my Dryfire series here. Now in this episode what I'm going to do is, I got two guns here. I have the, well, let me get up here. I have the, so I can get into the light a little bit better. I have the Glock 19 here with the G sight in here. I don't know if you can see that. Probably can't. Light's a little bit harder to get in there. Getting the G sight in here is a little bit harder because the slide cutout here is a little bit smaller, but you can still get it in there. So this is my Glock 19 Gen 3. Nothing special, everything stock. Don't put the magazine in, it's cleared. There we go. So that's this, and let's get an idea of the target here. And there you go, there's the size of the different targets that you could see. So I'll be shooting with the Glock 19 here, Gen 3, everything stock. And then also, I'll be comparing it with this. This is also empty, and there's the G sight, a little bit bigger here on the cutout, on the slide here. Easier to get in on the G sight. I actually will have magazines in this because I don't have to rack the slide to get the laser going because it's hammer fired. Unlike the Glock here, once you pull it, you have to rack the slide, shoot, rack the slide, shoot, rack the slide in order to engage the trigger here. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do a comparison, okay? I will do a comparison on the two guns here and kind of show how different it is the way it holds. When I hold the Glock, I feel like I'm doing more like this. Feels like more angled grip right here. It's more angled compared to my Taurus TH9. It feels more like this. You see, it's a little bit straighter, not angled as much, a little bit more straighter. There's no doubt that they both shoot. So if I take the Glock and I put this in front of me, it will shoot without really aiming. Like, I can do this all day. Matter of fact, let me let's shoot. Let's shoot. I probably move this around a little bit. Just a little bit. There we go. Okay. So I got a racket, and I have the gloves on because I was getting blisters from racking and shooting. Plus the little safety here gives me a little blister on my trigger finger. But anyways, so if I just point and not really aim, but as long as I have this slide in front of me, you know what I mean? Sorry about that. That was the last one. Camera got in the way. You know, I can shoot. That's not an issue. That's not an issue, you know. Often
0.0 seconds.
Often when people shoot, they always present the firearm, right? Their gun out this way anyway. So if in this case, yeah, you know, you can just, I wish I could just pulling this trigger and it would strike the G sight, but unfortunately there's nothing for that yet. And I'm also going to compare the design of a striker fire. More Pacific is more specific, the Glock and the way striker fire is designed compared to the hammer fire design of this particular Taurus TH9 with the trigger spring here versus the Glock trigger and the spring being a striker fire in the back, and pros and cons, both firing and laser dry firing as well. So if you know my issue with the Taurus TH9C compact, I have two of these. I have one being sent in to the Taurus for warranty work, is that the trigger spring, or the trigger return spring, really, there's also another spring and coil here that actually works with the trigger bar and everything to push it forward. But this little take up right here that you hear, that's the spring pulling, yep, I think pulling on the trigger bar to make it return to this reset area. That's what that noise you hear. And then the trigger bar rubbing against the back area right here. So that's what you're hearing. So the weak point is with this particular gun is the trigger spring. So that's the con of this. The pros of having a hammer fired is, and I will simply just show you. is just pulling the trigger in a dry fire, laser dry fire training. This is awesome. Hammer fired guns are awesome, or any double strike striker fired gun like the Taurus G2C. I don't have one. I already have this gun. I'm not really interested in that particular model. But if you do have a G2C, a Taurus G2C, that's double strike capability. In other words, you don't have to rack it to have the firing pin go. Now, I can't really speak too much about the G2C because I don't own one and I haven't really looked at how it works. So I can't tell you whether it's good or bad, or what the weak points are, what the strong points.
0.0 seconds.
But I do have a Taurus TH9C that I can definitely talk to you about in good detail because I use it practically every day. So that's the pros of this particular gun, is just I could just, you know, dry fire with this without racking the slide. That's a lot more fun. You get a lot more trigger pulls. You get a lot more practice in, you know. So, and that's why the trigger spring, or the trigger return spring, breaks on me. It's more of a trigger return spring, but in the manual it's called a trigger spring. But with the Glock and the way it's striker fired, the spring is back here. There's nothing here. There's no return trigger spring here, and that's why it locks in the back, and it needs to be reset. It needs to be reset because you're pushing back the striker and resetting the I don't know what you call it. You're resetting the trigger, and the spring is back here for you to. That's the take up, and what you're hearing is the trigger bar moving and rubbing or doing its movement back over here. That's what you're hearing, and then the spring is back here to have it return back to this spot right here. So two different systems. This gun will, in a live fire and pulling will probably outlast this gun, in my opinion, just looking at the two designs, okay? But you also have to consider this gun cost me $500. This gun, well, this particular gun I bought retail $350 with tax. This is actually $500 then you add the tax, it was more like $550. You know, so you know, there's a big difference. I bought 2 guns for almost the price of 1 Glock. So if you think about that, you know, you have to weigh the cost benefits, you know, the value benefits of each gun. And I feel right now, as far as dry firing, even though the trigger spring breaking on me is still under warranty, it's worth it because I get so many trigger pulls and good practice, and I can transition from what I've learned from from training with this gun to the Glock. It's just a slightly different handle, And so I'm going to show you. Let's shoot some more. I'm going to show you, like, when you put the gun out in front of you, when you put the slide out in front of you, yeah, you don't have to really aim per se. You'll hit a target. But what I'm talking about is when you're drawing and you may not have time to put this out, put this out like this. You have to maybe be right here and not like here where you're seeing through the slide. How easy is it at point and shoot? It's a little difficult because of the way the handle's kind of set up. It's kind of weird. It's not natural compared to the TH9 where it feels more natural, like you're point and shooting. And I'll do my best shooting this, okay? I'm not trying to be biased. This is just something I've noticed between the 2 guns. It doesn't mean it's good or better or bad. It's just different. You just have to train with it. But let's so from this position here, I don't see from the slide, so I can't really see it. So let's I'm going to start from the left and work my way down, 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 going from left to right, okay? So let's start from the left side here. Oh gosh, I was way off. I'm doing my best. On the bottom ones, I think I do better. On the top ones, whoa, I was way high. And I'm compensating by shooting lower. The ones on the bottom, I think, are a lot easier. There we go. Finally getting used to it. Takes a while to get used to. Even then, I'm still shooting high.
0.0 seconds.
So, the shots on the upper 2 left side, I was shooting high because it's, again, the way you grip this, it feels like you're doing this and you want to do this, and so you're going to aim high. And that's the thing about this. It's kind of, maybe because I've also been shooting the Taurus TH9 and I'm used to this handle, maybe that could be it. But I feel overall the natural grip of this for some kind of a point shoot where the slide's not in front of you, where you can obviously aim it a little bit better, or without aligning the sights, is what I'm trying to say. So a point and shoot in front like this, yeah, you could probably do well without aligning the sights. But when you don't have that sight picture and you're shooting from a compressed or not extended kind of stance, the Glock is a little bit harder to point and shoot. It is. So let's go ahead and do this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of rack it like this, as if so it's close to comparison. Oh, great. Okay, a little bit low on that. So as you notice, I I shot most of the circles except for that first one. It was a little low, and it's a lot faster, as you can tell, because I didn't really rack the slide. I just kind of just touched it to give the feeling of racking. You don't need to rack this. You could just pull the trigger, and that's the
0.0 seconds.
And that's the advantage of having a Taurus TH9 with the hammer, despite the weakness of I don't want to say flaw or design flaw, but obviously the weakest point of this gun as far as dry firing, which could also be live fire, because if you do enough live fires and you pull this trigger, the spring has a potential to break. I've already broken 2 on my other gun. I haven't on this gun because I've been mostly training on the original gun. This is a newer gun, but I'll be training on this, and we'll see if the trigger return spring, what it really is, but trigger spring will break on this. So that's the difference. And again, pros and cons. Con is the weakest point, this trigger spring. All right. The con on this is you got to rack the slide, and you could get used to it. Let me try to do it again here. I'm trying to compensate for that high grip. Okay. I mean, you could get used to it. See, I've gotten used to it by the time I get to the right, on the right side of circles. So yeah, you could get used to it. You could get used to it. Oh, did I miss that last one? There we go. So, you could get used to it. You can train with it. If your Glock is the way, if you have a Glock and you train with this, you laser dry fire, you could definitely, point and shoot. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, in my opinion, it's just a little different, but you can definitely get used to it.
0.0 seconds.
The con about this whole thing is you have to rack the slide. Oh my gosh. And if you do that, if you get into your muscle memory doing this, you could in a live fire do this and be doing this all day in a live fire, and you definitely don't want to be doing that, So as far as like doing multiple shots with the Glock, it's limited. It's not ideal, but like trigger control, let me see here. I'm going to shoot the one right in the middle. But as far as trigger control and just, right, see, bullseye, right on the dot. As far as trigger control and doing, stuff like this, like you're doing trigger control kind of manipulation and getting steady, holding your grip, and then getting feedback from the laser, it's good enough. You could probably do that very well, and you don't have to worry about doing this as much. Even though you do have to rack the slide, you're not like, it's not like you're trying to multi-fire and then rack the slide, shoot, rack the slide, shoot, rack the slide and shoot. You're not gonna, I don't think you're gonna develop too much of a muscle memory every time you shoot, but for this purpose of just holding it
0.0 seconds.
and then getting your sight alignment, getting your sight picture, and then pulling the trigger pull is way easier on a Glock, of course. The only thing is it's a little rigid right here, and I do feel like I get blisters on this trigger finger from doing a lot of dry firing. But if you compare it to this, you do have to double action. You do have to you do have to pull harder. And in my opinion, it strengthens your trigger pull by doing this double action spring. It's about 12 pound, but I don't have to rack the slide. I'm strengthening my trigger pull, my trigger finger, and I'm not racking the slide through muscle memory, or I'm not developing a muscle memory and racking the slide every time I shoot. And so I think there's some benefits with a hammer fire gun. So there you go. So there's my two comparisons between the Glock. It's gonna ring here. Hold on.
0.0 seconds.
Okay, so let me get up here, get better in the light here. So here's my two comparison here of the Glock and the Taurus TH9. And they're both good guns. I carry both of them depending on what I do. With the belt and holster, I'm carrying more of the Taurus because I've been training with it. I do have another Glock 19 Gen 4 in my fanny pack that I do not chamber around because it's just loose in the fanny pack. There's no holster in it. And usually I carry that during the summer where it's much hotter. Wearing a belt, I'm probably not going to wear my body armor, and concealing it, it's kind of difficult when you're in swimming shorts and a compression shirt, or I wear a compression shirt, but I wear oversized, so it's like a regular shirt, but it's see-through, so it's kind of hard to conceal. So I choose to wear a fanny pack, and it kind of goes with it. It looks like I'm jogging, exercising. So, but that's what I carry usually. Summertime. So, anyways, there's two comparison as far as dry firing and the gun itself, and the pros and cons of laser dry firing. These two guns, they're both good. You just have to train a little bit differently. Of course, you can't put the other thing is you can't put a magazine like I do with this. You can't put a magazine in here, or you can. You might have to just slightly pull the rack, but sometimes you end up pulling it more. Matter of fact, I have a magazine right here. So you could slightly pull the rack and still practice with some kind of magazine, so you could practice your whatever reloads if you wanted to do. But sometimes you might end up opening the slide. So anyways, there you go. Two comparison, two guns, two different ways of practicing with a laser. Anyways, that's it for this episode. Hopefully you all appreciated this information. Hopefully it was helpful and useful to you. Until next time, everyone. Bye.